welcome back to Fire Princess Reviews. I'm Fire Princess Lily here to tell you about comics, cartoons, and other awesome nerd stuff. So, today what are we talking about? We're talking about X-Men Red, a comic from Marvel, obviously, written by Tom Taylor, and it's pretty good. It's got an interesting story and a positive message that we are going to get into. And I know what you're asking, hey, wasn't your last comic review also about an X title? Yes, it was. Does this mean that we're only going to get X titles from here on out? No, it does not. We will be reviewing other comics as I'm able to get to them. I just have a big backlog that I'm trying to read through, and I had just promised to review this a while back and never got around to it. So here we are now. We're going to talk about it. It's got 12 issues if you include the annual, and you should. The annual actually takes place before the story. It picks up basically right after the resurrection of Jean Grey, Resurrection of Phoenix. Or Phoenix Resurrection is what it was called, I believe. Anyway, which was a whole thing that I was like, anyway, I'm glad that Jean Grey is alive. This is the comic that makes me glad that Jean Grey is alive again, and hopefully free of the Phoenix forever. She did send it away. That is like, the only time I ever want to see the Phoenix again is when it's time for Quentin Query to step up and be the Phoenix. So that is hopefully going to happen not too soon, because I'm enjoying him in West Coast Avengers, which is another comic we're going to talk about eventually. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about X-Men Red. So let's just get right into it. It's 12 issues. As mentioned, it's got I've already talked about the message. It's really positive. And the art's really good. And of course, it is done by Tom Taylor, who did all new Wolverine. So he really, and the comic has Laura in it, as you can tell from the cover I showed you. So her character is handled really well. Is everybody's character handled really well? Yes. Addendum. I'm not sure how well Namor is handled in this. Not because because he is in this. Not because I think that the way he's handled is bad or anything. I just don't know a lot about Namor. And he doesn't quite show up in the comic very often, despite being on the team. Right? He's on the team, but he's also the King of Atlantis, so he's always got other Atlantean things to do. He does, of course, offer assistance whenever possible, especially since they are staying in Atlantis. Now, in this comic, it is just after Jean Grey has been resurrected for the umpteenth time. This time, Phoenix free, for sure, we promise. Please. And she has been gone for a while, and she's come back to a world where everybody is super divided. There have been fights between superhero teams. Most notably, the Avengers and the X-Men had a big, huge fight over the Phoenix, which probably led to the Phoenix being like, damn, you know what we need? We need a Jean Grey behind the wheel of this shit. That was a mess. It was a mess. So, yeah. And Jean's got a vision. She's like, okay, we can't keep fucking doing this shit, right? I'm trying not to curse as much, but it's just, I go. Anyway, we can't keep doing this. We can't keep doing this thing where, you know, we get secluded off into a part of a community and then we're othered in a different way. We're human beings too. Sure, we're a different branch of human evolution, but human beings nonetheless. We just have fantastical powers. Now, I've got a lot of things that I could say about Charles Xavier, and they could probably take up a whole video, but we're gonna, like, just chug along past that. I'm only mentioning it because Jean appears in front of the United Nations after talking to Namor and T'Challa, because she's like, look, if I'm gonna appear in front of all these countries, I need the backing of somebody. Established nations. I can't count it on America. I can't count on anybody else but T'Challa. You've worked with a lot of mutants. You were married to Storm. You know, you've always had people's best interests at heart. That's your whole thing. And Namor, you are a mutant. Just fucking be a... Like, come on! Like, he has this whole thing about how mutants aren't his people. And she's like, yeah, they are. Anyway, we're gonna move on that. And she says to the United Nations, like, look, I want to develop a mutant nation, but I want y'all to, like, let that happen, right? I need y'all's support in this, because every time we decide that we're gonna, like, sequester ourselves from everybody else, be on our own little, you know, wherever, like Genosha, Utopia, any of those places, anytime we decide that we just want to be mutants by ourselves, away from y'all, not harming anybody, y'all come and you wreck that shit, and we can't do that. We cannot do that. So if you could please just vote on mutant rights, that would be super helpful to me, and just mutant kind in general. Now, of course, she does face some opposition, you know. People are like, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, are mutants people? The ambassador from Britain is like, how do we know that we can trust you to be your own nation, yada, yada, yada. And it's just like, it's a whole thing. But T'Challa and Namor, they're diplomats. They come through and say, yep, Wakanda's for this, Atlantis is for this, and the motion sort of moves through. Mutants are going to try to, you know, do their own thing. Because right now, the situation is the countries themselves get to make their own mutant laws, and in a lot of countries, it's okay to be imprisoned for just suspecting for being a mutant, and in other worse countries, it's outright just sport to hunt mutants. If you have any inkling that they may be a mutant, go ahead and just cock one up and shoot it. Now, I don't know why I did that accent, but you know why. So, after the press conference, Jean Grey is approached by the ambassador from Britain. Is like, hey, you know, that was just me showing, like, you know, a strong front or whatever that's supposed to mean. You know, I'm really on board for this. I just think you don't have to have these, you know, appearances. And she's like, I really do want to help. And Jean's like, great, that'd be awesome. And then the senator's head explodes. And, like, a very cryptic message comes out of the senator's mouth. Not the senator, the ambassador. And her head explodes. Now, everybody thinks that Jean did it. It's live and on cameras. Nobody knows what the discussion was about. And it just kind of looks like Jean went, pop. You know, she's like this. She's like, wait, no. Like, you know, she's actually trying to, like, warn the ambassador that something's about to happen. And that's when the head explodes. So, thankfully, Laura and Gabby and Nightcrawler, they're all there with her. And they get Jean the heck up out of there. Wow. So, that's how the comic starts. It turns out that Cassandra Nova, who is the twin sister of Charles Xavier, and who isn't a mutant, she's a space parasite who rebuilt her body from nothing. It's a whole... She's a weird character, and she always gets trotted out every so often, you know, to be as anti-mutant as possible. Now, I don't know. I know that she's not technically a mutant, but she has all the same kind of abilities that Xavier does, plus some that Jean has. She's like a good, she's like a combo of the two. She's a she's a telepath and a telekinetic, and she can, like, make her own body. Like, it's a whole thing. So, her whole plot, the whole plot for X-Men Red, is that Sentinels don't work. I mean, they're big robots. They do their jobs, but they're slow and big robots and easy to see. And they have to know mutants in the vicinity. What if evil genius that she is decides to she's brainwashed Forge, and she has him create something called a Sentite, like a nanite that's a Sentinel. And it gets implanted into somebody's head, and it lets them know, hey, when there are mutants just around. And kill those mutants. It's a whole thing. She's implanted hate, more or less. Specifically targeted at mutants. Like, it can just sense mutants in however so many mile radius. So it basically turns people into Sentinels. And, you know, there's a lot of anti-mutant rhetoric out, blah, 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 blah. So there's a lot of, when these things do happen, there's talk of, well, I mean, what would you expect him to do? They don't know what that mutant could do. Of course they defended themselves. It's the whole thing. But the problem is that a lot of the places that the Sinites are going are people who don't actually have problems with mutants, so they're just being fed information and made to do these things. Now, the other problem is that mutants themselves are not immune from these Sinites. It's a weird name, okay? They could have named it something totally different. They could have called it Nano Sentinels and really, it would have been just fine and maybe a little more cumbersome, but it would have rolled off the tongue a little better. That's a complaint. Just because I have to talk about it. So, it's a whole thing. There's a whole ethos at work in this comic. And one of the reasons I mentioned the mutant thing is because Storm gets implanted with it, and she almost wipes Wakanda off the map because it's fucking Storm. And she's a super powerful mutant, and somehow she's not classified at the Omega level. Or maybe she is. I'd have to double check that. But I'm not out here. Anyway, Storm's powerful, right? This comic also introduces two other mutants, two new mutants. One named Trinary, who is a technopath. That means she can talk to and kind of control machines. Like, she reprograms a Sentinel on the fly, like an actual flying deathbot. Giant deathbot. Anyway, flying giant deathbot. Let's move on from that. And the other one is Gentle. His power is he's super strong. But whenever he powers up, it hurts. And he could kill himself if he goes too far. How strong is he? Well, graphs say that if he got all the way powered up, he could probably, it's not certain, but he might be able to go toe-to-toe with the Hulk on some level. Because we all know that the Hulk has just platitudes, right? There's whole layers to the Hulk and his strength, and he gets so strong at some points that not only is he super strong, but he also starts getting intelligent again, and then he goes beyond that, and gets just, it's crazy. There's a whole, it's called Planet Hulk, it's called World War Hulk. Check that out. It's a whole Hulk story. Whew. So basically, the story is Jean Grey and her X-Men versus Cassandra Nova and her Sinites, and what they can do for that. Well, they can stop the spread of hate and misinformation about mutants and solve this Sinite problem because it's so tiny, and where it puts itself in your brain is basically super dangerous to remove. But that's why Trinary is here to kind of reprogram and shut off these things. It's a whole, it's great, and it's handled really, really interesting. And there are times, like, you know, okay, look, you know the good guys are going to win. That's how comics usually work. Now, sometimes they don't, but, you know, 9 times out of 10, good guys win. And what's interesting about the way this particular book is handled is it's not necessarily, it does kind of all come down to like a big fight, but not in the manner that you would kind of expect it to, right? So, read it, check it out. I don't want to like spoil the ending. Let me tell you who's on the team, right? Because we got Jean Grey, she's amazing, we like her. We like her without the Phoenix. We have Laura and Gabby, as mentioned. We have Nightcrawler, I mentioned way earlier that Namor's on the team. Sort of. Gentle and Trinary. Storm joins up on the team. And Gambit. It's one of the most interesting and diverse groups of X-Men that we've seen that carry the X-Men name. Not like Generation X or X-Gen or Next Gen or any like X-Men affiliate, but an actual X-Men team. Because you know what? It's Jean Grey, and if she wants to put together her own X-Men team and call it the X-Men, she can, because she's Jean freaking gray. There we go. Didn't curse. Good job. Why am I trying not to curse? I don't know. It's a thing. It's a choice. And yeah. And it's a good team, and it works well together. Gabby is always amazing, and I love Gabby so much. It's good. And I don't want to spoil how it ends, or how the fight goes. I mean, I did tell you that they win, but it's an interesting and good, it's a good way that they win. It's not quite what you're expecting, so, yeah. And it solves the problem of Cassandra Nova, which I've always felt like she's kind of a tired character. There are reasons I feel like she's tired because of how it relates to other things. And this really isn't the forum to talk about those other things. Or maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe we'll do a whole video on Cassandra Nova at some point, but I kind of don't want to. Maybe. We'll see. It's an interesting how I could frame. Anyway, not important. So what are we going to talk about next time? Check this out. X-Men Red. It's so good. 11 issues. There's already a graphic, trade paperback for this because it's not producing any more issues. It was kind of canceled in favor for Uncanny X-Men, or maybe it wasn't canceled for that reason because it did good numbers. Age of X is happening right now, and it's a whole thing. It is literally a whole thing. So yeah, what are we going to talk about next time? Next time, I actually want to talk about another comic from Image Comics called Unnatural, which is surprisingly more lewd than I thought it would be, but not so lewd that we can't talk about it. I just have to be kind of careful about what cover I show y'all, right? Because this flag taken down, terrible. But until then, we are totally going to talk about Unnatural. I'll try to remember. Until then, love comics, love cartoons, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!